Have you ever imagined that the woman your son chose for himself and whom you would consider a daughter would betray you and turn your life into a nightmare? I thought this only in movies, but it happened to me. I am Chloe, 68, recently retired school librarian, widow of a man who could fix anything with a butter knife and a swear word. Lately, my body has been speaking in a jittery Morse code. I can't translate little flutters in my chest. A sour metallic taste I swear isn't from the tea, and a fog that rolls in exactly when I try to remember where I set my keys or why I walked into a room. It's like my mind keeps hitting the buffering icon. I've always been self-sufficient, raised my son on a teacher's salary, paid off the Bungalow 1 coupon at a time, but these last few months I've needed more help than I'm comfortable admitting. Mostly from my son, Ethan. Ethan's 35, an engineer who still keeps his Lego sets in labeled tubs for future kids. He's a good boy in the way a book is good until someone dog-ears the pages, earnest, careful, but lately, foldable. He's married to Lila, who is my age in years and 20 in patience. She has a laugh that hits like an ice cube in a glass and a talent for saying, of course, like it means never. I can tell my needing Ethan annoys her. She doesn't even try to hide it anymore. Every time I call to ask if he can stop by, because the back steps feel steeper or the smoke alarm chirps and I can't reach it, there's a pause long enough to stick a bookmark in, then Lila's voice in the background. Tell her we're on our way out. Am I needy? I don't think so. I'm scared. The fluttering comes like an uninvited guest, and I don't trust myself with ladders or long drives. The world shrank on me when I wasn't looking. Even the grocery aisles feel like narrow bridges over something I can't name. So yes, I call Ethan, and yes, he comes, and yes, Lila looks at the wall like it insulted her. We used to have Sunday dinners pot roast, the kind that falls apart if you breathe on it last month. I tried again, the roast was fine. Even with the fog, I can still measure salt with my fingertips. But Lila didn't eat much. She took pictures of her plate, then pushed it around like she was rearranging furniture. You okay? I asked. She smiled without teeth, just keeping an eye on the cholesterol, she said, and later I heard her in the kitchen muttering about sodium bonds, while she rearranged my Tupperware into categories that made sense to no one on earth. I see the annoyance in little things. The way she wipes the counter after me as if I'm shedding crumbs made of germs. The way she answers my questions with, "Did you Google it?" as if typing in symptoms has ever hugged anyone. When I told her about the fluttering, she said, "It's probably just anxiety, the same way Ethan used to say monsters aren't real, when he was 5 and I was the one waking from dreams with a scream in my throat." I do have people who are squarely, solidly good, even if imperfect. Marta Alvarez, for one, my neighbor across the alley. She's 74, a retired seamstress who can hem a skirt while giving you the history of every scandal at St. Mark's Parish. Her English is good but colorful. Her words walk around the block and come back with chisme. She brings me caldo when it's cold and plants tomatoes like they're a love letter. When the fog rolls in and I can't remember whether I fed the cat that died 2 years ago, she sits me down and says, "Julita, we make lists. Pens beat ghosts." There's also Dr. Neil Rahman, my GP at the clinic on Jefferson. He's been seeing me since the hot flashes years. He listens the old-fashioned way, with his eyebrows. Last visit, he ordered blood work and a heart monitor. "Let's rule things out," he said, and told me to write down every time I felt strange. I started keeping a notebook by the toaster. The list makes me feel sane and ridiculous at once. Another study, Irene, my friend from the library and now the church thrift shop. She's the kind of woman who will bring you a casserole and, if you don't open the door, let herself in to put it in your oven anyway. Once, when I told her I felt like my brain was full of static, she didn't tell me to Google anything. She pressed a rosary into my hand and said, "When the stations go fuzzy, switch frequencies." It helped for a minute. Not enough. The first time I felt the fluttering in front of Lila, I was sitting on their couch because Ethan had promised to look at my porch light after work. Lila was at the dining table sorting mail like a dealer in a casino. Something skittered across my chest and stole my breath, and I gripped the sofa arm. "Ethan?" I said. Lila didn't look up. "He's in the garage," she said, and flipped another envelope. When I didn't answer, she finally glanced over, her eyes moving like a scanner. Do you want water? She asked, already sighing. No, I managed. I want my son. She called him, but her voice had that bright, brittle polish women use when they're being watched. Babe, your mom wants you. When he came in, all concern, I swear she rolled her eyes at the window. Maybe I imagined it. The fog is a trickster. I know what you're thinking. Tell her off, Chloe. Set boundaries. But I'm not a fighter. I'm a ledger keeper. I notice things and add them up. Like the brochures on Lila's desk last week when I dropped off some jars for her pantry. One brochure was for a grand world cruise, 365 days, 145 ports. I picked it up, impressed by the silver ship slicing through blue water. Tucked beneath it, mostly hidden, was another pamphlet, Willow Pines Senior Living Brookview Campus. The photos showed sunlight, folded towels, a woman my age smiling like she remembered a punchline. My name wasn't printed on anything. There was no reason to think it was about me, except for how my stomach dropped like an elevator. Travel inspiration, Lila said behind me, voice cool. I hadn't heard her come in. She took the cruise brochure from my hands and pinched the corner of the other pamphlet so it slid out of sight. I'm thinking Ethan and I should plan something big. Life is short, right? She smiled. She has excellent teeth. Absolutely, I said, and set the jars down with a clink that sounded like an alarm to me and nothing to her. 2 days later, Marta told me she saw a woman in a pencil skirt talking to Mr. Castle, my across-the-street neighbor who works in insurance and knows everyone's business. She asked him about your house, Marta said, whipping towels from her clothesline. If you're alone. If you plan to sell. I say, why? You looking for ghosts? She laughed. Much teeth. Maybe a realtor, I said, trying to be reasonable. But that elevator feeling came again. Then there was Tom at the pharmacy, who knows my name and the brand of socks I buy for Ethan every Christmas. When I picked up my beta blockers, he asked, so, big trip coming up? I blinked. He tapped his computer. There's a note on your profile to align refills for 12 months. That's what we do for folks going abroad. His smile faltered. Was that not right? I laughed too loud. Must be a mistake, I said, and signed without arguing because I suddenly wanted to be home, sitting at my kitchen table where the world is small and knowable. On the drive back, I passed a billboard for Willow Pines. What if independence felt effortless? It asked. I turned the radio up. Here's where I admit my not perfect part. Instead of confronting anyone, I snooped. In my own house, yes, but still. Ethan has a key to fix things, and Lila uses it to drop off things smoothie powder, a candle that smells like clean cotton, a basket of spa stuff that made my bathroom look staged for a magazine. I keep a drawer for the little notes she leaves. This will help with clutter. In a folder labeled Good Intentions. That night, I rifled through it. Nothing. Then I checked the mail basket by the door where I throw circulars and pizza coupons. At the very bottom was a white envelope with my name typed neatly. Inside, a glossy trifold for Willow Pines Transitional Care. On the back, in pen, someone had written a phone number and, underneath, ask for Marcy. No return address. I held that paper like it might bruise me. Transitional care. Like crossing a river. Like a bridge I hadn't decided to take. My heart did its skittering tap dance. I sat down on the stairs and counted breaths the way Dr. Rahman taught me, but the fog curled around the edges of my vision anyway. I called Ethan. He didn't pick up. It was late. I almost called Lila, then didn't. Instead, I called Irene. It rang once and she answered like she answers everyone. Talk to me, honey. I told her about the brochure, about the pharmacy note, about Marta's pencil skirt sighting. She got very quiet and then said, come sleep here. The couch pulls out. I stared at my own couch, the indent where my husband used to sit. No, I said. I'm okay. I just needed to say it out loud. The next morning, Ethan showed up with a new smoke detector and that worried crease between his eyebrows he got from his father. He kissed my head and asked how I was feeling. I almost blurted it all out. Then Lila swept in behind him carrying a reusable bag full of vitamins and smiled like a camera was pointed at her. Good news, she chirked. We're getting you set up for the adventure of a lifetime, Chloe. What adventure? I asked, throat suddenly dry. Oh, she said, feigning surprise. Didn't Ethan tell you? She looked at him as if to say, Your line. He looked at her as if to say, Which script are we reading? The silence after was long enough to hear the refrigerator hum. My fingers found the edge of the brochure in my pocket. Marta's words thumped in my head, pen speak ghosts. I straightened my shoulders. What adventure, I repeated, and this time I said it with my librarian voice, the one that could quiet a cafeteria. Ethan opened his mouth. Lila smiled wider. And somewhere in that smile, something very cold took my hand. For a little while, life smoothed itself out into something that looked like normal. Ethan had a big project coming up for work, something about site inspections out of state, and the house seemed lighter when he stopped by. He fussed over me in that gentle way he inherited from his father, making sure the pantry was stocked and the front door latch was working. I'll only be gone a week, Mom, he said, lingering at the doorway. Lila will check in on you. Those words, meant to reassure, sat in my chest like a stone. When Ethan left, the quiet in my house didn't feel like peace. It was the kind of quiet that waits, a pause before a glass tips and shatters. On the second day, the doorbell rang, and there was Lila, all polished hair and perfume that smelled faintly of citrus and warning. She smiled too brightly. Thought I'd drop by and see how you're doing, she said, stepping inside before I could answer. She looked around like she was cataloging the place for an estate sale. We sat at the kitchen table. She asked if I was taking my medication, what time, how often, the exact dosage. Then, in that sing-song voice people use on toddlers, she said, You don't ever forget your pills, do you, Chloe? I told her no, though my notebook by the toaster had a few empty squares where I'd forgotten to write things down. Her gaze flicked toward the counter like she was checking for proof. By the third visit, her questions had shifted. Do you ever get confused about the date? Like, wake up and not know what day it is? Or, have you had any incidents with the stove lately? Leaving burners on. Always asked with that feather-light tone, as if she were collecting curiosities rather than evidence. Once, I stepped into the living room to get her the crochet blanket she'd admired, and when I came back, she was holding my phone. Oh, sorry, she said quickly, putting it down. Thought I heard it buzz. But later, when I checked my call log, there was a number I didn't recognize, no message, just a call placed in the last 10 minutes. Her visits became daily. She'd pop in with muffins, vitamin samples, or a new herbal tea that helps with memory. She'd walk through my house under the pretense of bringing laundry to the washer, eyes skimming over papers on my desk, drawers she half closed. Once, she asked to see my ID for a loyalty card she was signing me up for, and when I gave it to her, she stared at it a little too long before handing it back. The calm was still holding, but it felt stretched thin, like a rubber band about to snap. Even Marta noticed. That one comes too much, she said one afternoon when Lila's car had barely turned the corner. Like a crow looking for shiny things. I laughed, but the truth was crawling under my skin. And in the quiet after Lila left, the thought came uninvited and stubborn. She's not just visiting. She's measuring. And I had no idea what for .it was a Thursday morning, the fourth day Ethan had been gone, when the panic first rose in me like a fast tide. Lila arrived unannounced again, a paper bag of healthy snacks dangling from her wrist, chia seed crackers, dried apricots, and something green in a pouch that looked like astronaut food. She set them on the counter and began unpacking them as though she'd just come home from the store she owned. Her voice had that calm, syrupy tone she used when she wanted me to feel small. I thought we could talk about how you've been feeling lately, Chloe. Have you been getting enough sleep? You seemed a little scattered last time I was here. Scattered. The word landed like a pebble dropped into my chest. I told her I'd been fine, but she wasn't listening. She slid a familiar brochure across the table toward me. The glossy cover showed a ship slicing through turquoise water, champagne glasses clinking in the sunlight. Wouldn't it be lovely? Waking up somewhere new every morning, no chores, no stress. Just you, the ocean, and endless adventures. Her eyes held mine for a moment too long. I gave a brittle laugh, the kind that breaks in the middle. My chest did that strange flutter again, and the edges of my vision began to fuzz. I felt trapped, like a bird that had flown into a room and couldn't find the open window. My fingers twitched for my phone. I excused myself to the hallway, closed the door halfway, and dialed Ethan. It rang and rang. No answer. I tried again, pressing the phone tighter to my ear, willing him to pick up. But all I got was his voicemail, his cheerful voice telling me to leave a message. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the call again button. I needed to hear him, needed to say the words I couldn't say in front of her. But my chest was tight and my palms were damp. When I came back into the kitchen, Lila was leaning casually against the counter, my phone in her hand. "Oh," she said, smiling like she'd been caught doing something silly. "I saw you left it here. Thought I'd check if Ethan called you back." I froze in the doorway. "Did he?" "Nope," she said, as if she were telling me the weather. Then she slipped my phone onto the table and pulled out her own. With a little flourish, she pressed a button and put it to her ear. "Hey, babe," she chirped, her eyes never leaving mine. "Yeah, I'm at Mom's." "She's fine." I'm watching her. Honestly, I think she's a little bored. She was just telling me she'd love to take a vacation, maybe somewhere warm. I told her I'd help look for options. My stomach flipped. I hadn't said a single word about wanting a vacation. Her voice stayed breezy. "Don't worry, she's perfectly safe. I've got her covered until you get back. We're just going to browse a few travel ideas, make it fun for her. You just focus on your meetings, okay?" She laughed lightly at something he said, the sound like a bell with a crack in it. When she hung up, she turned that perfect smile on me. "See? He's happy you're in good hands." I sat down slowly, my knees threatening to give out. Good hands. Those hands had been rifling through my mail, scrolling through my call log, spinning her version of reality for Ethan while I stood there mute. Lila opened her laptop, her nails clicking against the keys as she typed into the search bar, "Best long-term vacation packages for seniors." She tilted the screen toward me as if she were my travel agent. "Now, I know you said you love the idea of the cruise, but we should keep our options open. Some of these retirement resorts have activities every day, swimming, yoga, art classes. You wouldn't even have to cook." Her words dripped with false cheer, but underneath them I heard the quiet hum of something far more deliberate. The calm I'd been clinging to was nothing but glass, thin, fragile, and one breath away from shattering. I could feel it in my bones. Whatever she was planning, she was laying the last pieces in place. And soon, she wouldn't just be visiting my house. She'd be deciding where I lived. Ethan called on Sunday morning, his voice warm but a little worn, like he'd been up all night. In the background, I heard the low hum of a hotel air conditioning unit and the dull thud of heavy doors closing somewhere down the hall. "Mom," he said, his tone lighter than I'd expected, "I've been thinking, maybe it'd be nice if we all went on a cruise together. You know, make it a family thing. I could take some extra days off once this project wraps up. Pick one of those routes with the historical stops you like, the old cities, the museums." The words came like a breeze through a stuffy room, and for the first time in days, I felt my chest loosen. A cruise together. Something with me in the picture, not quietly written out of it. "That sounds wonderful," I said quickly, afraid he might change his mind if I hesitated. It's been years since we took a trip like that. Before Ethan could say anything more, I heard it, the soft, deliberate clack of heels crossing my kitchen tile. Lila's voice slid into the conversation with perfect timing, her tone bright and full of that sweet concern she used when strangers were listening. "Oh, honey, I forgot to tell you. There was a little shuffle, and I knew without seeing it that she'd taken the phone from his hand." "We can't do that," she said, sounding almost regretful, the way people sound when they've already decided you'll accept their decision. "I've already booked us tickets to that wellness retreat in Sedona. You remember, right? Mineral pools, sound therapy, mountain hikes. It's non-refundable." I froze where I stood, one hand braced against the counter. "And," she added, like it was a natural continuation, "I've been talking to a place about a little getaway for your mom, too." There was a pause. "A place?" Ethan asked, his voice tightening just a bit. Willow Pines, remember? The one with the art classes and the ocean view?" I thought it would be nice for her to have a long rest while we're gone. They can keep an eye on her, make sure she's comfortable. I've already started the paperwork." The word paperwork rang in my head like a slammed door. "Lila," Ethan began, but she was already stepping over his words, her voice as smooth as polished glass. "It's only for a few months, babe. She even told me herself she'd love a vacation from the house. Didn't you, Chloe?" My name came out of her mouth with the faintest edge, a warning dressed up as a question. I opened my mouth to speak, to correct her, but nothing came. The air in the kitchen felt thick, like I was breathing through cotton. The silence on my end must have sounded like agreement. Outside, through the open window over the sink, I heard the faint creak of a gate swinging shut. Marta's gate. She'd been hanging laundry earlier, her clothesline stretching almost to the fence we shared. If she stood on tiptoe, she could see straight into my kitchen. I wondered if she was standing there now. "I just don't want Mom to feel shipped off," Ethan said, carefully, like he knew the words could break something. "She won't," Lila assured him. "She'll think of it as a cruise on land. No stress, no responsibility, people to take care of her every need. You know she'd hate to slow us down on the trip." It was a performance, and a masterful one, painting such a perfect picture that saying no would sound selfish. I could almost hear Ethan soften on the other end of the line. They spoke for another few minutes, small talk about his meetings, the weather in Arizona, before the call ended and I was left staring at the wood grain of my table, my fists so tight I could feel my pulse in my palms. I stayed like that until I heard it, a light, deliberate tapping on the back door. Marta stepped in without waiting, a basket of neatly folded sheets in her arms. She glanced at me, her sharp eyes scanning my face. Whatever she saw there made her jaw set hard. "I was at the fence," she said in a low, deliberate voice. That one, she jerked her chin toward the direction Lila had gone, "Talks like you're a bag to put in storage." I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat. "She is making plans," Marta went on. "Plans for when you don't fight back. You must fight back, Cholita. You don't let her decide your life. Not while I'm breathing." I leaned against the counter, feeling the truth in her words sink into me. For the first time since this started, I realized I might not be entirely alone. Marta put her hand over mine, her grip surprisingly strong. "I have ears," she said simply, "and I hear enough to know you're in danger of being erased. So, we will listen more. We will watch." Something in her tone made me believe her. And for the first time in weeks, a small spark lit in my chest, not hope exactly, but something sharper, something that could cut. Marta still had her warm, work-roughened hand over mine when the sound of the front door opening sliced through our quiet like a knife. It wasn't a knock or even the soft rattle of someone trying the handle first. It was the confident click of a key turning in the lock, followed by heels tapping across my hallway tile. "Chloe?" Lila's voice floated toward us, bright and sugar smooth, the way people talk when they're trying to sound charming for company. "Oh, there you are. I was wondering where you'd gotten to." She stepped into the kitchen doorway, her eyes making one swift sweep over the scene, Marta leaning toward me, our hands joined on the table, the basket of folded sheets between us. Her smile stayed fixed, but I saw the flash in her eyes, quick, sharp, calculating. "Oh, hi, Marta," she said, all surface politeness. "I didn't realize you were visiting. We were just about to have Chloe lie down for a bit. She's been on her feet too much today." Marta's dark eyes didn't move from Lila's face. "She is fine," she said, the words carrying the weight of someone who meant every syllable. Lila tilted her head, lips curling into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Still, rest is important at her age. I'll walk you out." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a gentle but firm dismissal. Marta gave my hand a last, strong squeeze before releasing it. "I'll be back tomorrow, Cholita," she said, the promise in her voice enough to put a lump in my throat. She picked up her basket, but even as she walked to the back door, she kept her gaze on me, as if trying to anchor me in place. Lila followed her, holding the door open just wide enough for Marta to step through, then closing it with a soft but decisive click. She didn't turn back to me right away. She smoothed an imaginary crease on her blouse, took a slow breath, and only then turned with her bright, careful smile. "You must be tired, Chloe. Why don't you get some sleep? We've got a big day tomorrow. The way she said big day made the hairs on my arms lift. What's tomorrow? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. You'll see. She glanced toward the window, as if already thinking of tomorrow rather than today. Get some rest. You'll want your energy. That night I couldn't settle. The quiet in the house wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that hums, like an engine idling. I moved between rooms without purpose, sat in the armchair for a while, then on the sofa, then stood at the kitchen sink staring out into the darkened yard. Marta's yard light glowed faintly through the fence, a reminder that someone else in this world was awake. More than once, I picked up my phone to call Ethan, but each time I put it down. What would I even say? That I had a bad feeling? That Lila had been circling me like a hawk for days? I could already hear him telling me I was overthinking, that Lila just cared about me in her own way. Still, I promised myself, first thing in the morning, before Lila could interfere, I would call him. Morning didn't give me the chance. At 7:15 sharp, the doorbell rang. Before I could even get to my feet, the knocking followed, quick, confident, not the knock of someone who might be turned away. I opened the door to find Lila already halfway up the path from her car, her hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, sunglasses perched on her head, and car keys swinging from her fingers. Good, you're dressed, she said brightly, though I'd only thrown on a cardigan over my nightgown. We need to get going. I blinked at her. Going where? To the port, she said as if it were the most natural thing in the world. They had a last-minute opening for the speed cruise. Remember how you said you wanted something exciting? Well, surprise. We have to be there by 9. Something cold slid down my spine. I need to call Ethan first, I said. Oh, I already spoke to him, she replied breezily, stepping past me into the hall without being asked. He's thrilled you're finally taking a little adventure. Now come on, we're on a schedule. I didn't pack anything. It's all handled, she said, reaching for my coat on the rack. Just grab your shoes. I glanced toward the kitchen table where my phone sat, but she was already there, picking it up as though it were hers. I'll keep this safe for now, she said lightly, sliding it into her bag. You don't want to drop it in the water. My breath caught. This wasn't a suggestion. This was a removal. Lila, her hand came down on my elbow, firm enough to guide, soft enough to look harmless. Let's not be late. The click of the front door closing behind us felt final, like the sound of a lid snapping shut. As she steered me toward her car, the morning air felt sharp in my lungs. And beneath the brightness of her voice, I could hear the truth. I wasn't headed to any cruise port. I was being taken somewhere I didn't choose. And I had no way to stop it. The day began with the wrong kind of quiet. Not peaceful, not gentle, just still. The sort of stillness that feels like a pause in a conversation when you know something heavy is about to be said. Through the thin gap in my curtains, I could see the early morning light, pale and watery, not yet strong enough to burn away the damp. My house was silent except for the faint hum of the fridge and the tick of the wall clock. I had been awake since before 6, telling myself over and over, call Ethan before she comes. My phone sat on the kitchen table, charging overnight. It was my tether to the outside, my one way to cut through Lila's syrupy, suffocating narrative. But at 7:15, before I'd worked up the courage, the doorbell rang. The sound was sharp, quick, followed instantly by a brisk, confident knock. Not the kind that waits for permission. I shuffled to the door, pulling my cardigan tighter. She was already halfway up the path from her car. Her hair was drawn into a flawless ponytail, her sunglasses perched like a crown on her head, and her tailored coat hung perfectly in the morning air. She was smiling, not the wide, public smile she used for friends, but the tight, self-satisfied one I'd seen when she'd gotten exactly what she wanted. Good, you're dressed, she said cheerfully, though I was still in the cardigan I'd worn to bed, my hair uncombed. We need to get going. Going? My voice cracked slightly. To the port, she said, as though I should have known. They had a last-minute opening for the speed cruise. Remember how you said you wanted something exciting? Well, surprise. We have to be there by 9. I stayed in the doorway, one hand braced against the frame. I never don't be modest, she cut in, breezing past me into the hallway. It's going to be wonderful. Sea air, sunshine, no cooking, no cleaning. You'll thank me. She moved fast, too fast, straight into the kitchen. My eyes followed her automatically, locking on my phone. It was right where I'd left it, coiled in its charger on the table. If I could just grab it, call Ethan, but she was already there, plucking it up with an easy flick of her fingers, like it had been waiting for her. "Oh, Chloe," she said lightly, "I just realized I forgot to grab your phone from the counter earlier when I came by yesterday. But you won't need it on the cruise. We'll be too busy having fun. And honestly, I'd hate for it to get lost overboard or stolen. I'll keep it safe here at the house." Her voice was sugar, but the way she slipped it into her bag was final. There was no question in it. "I'd rather take it," I started, but she was already holding my coat out to me. "Come on, Chloe. We're on a schedule." From the passenger seat of her car, I had one clear view, through the slats in the fence, into Marta's yard. She was there, standing beside her laundry basket, a damp blouse draped over one arm. She looked between me and Lila, her brow knitting. I tried to catch her gaze and gave the smallest shake of my head. The engine started. We began to roll forward. In the split second before we turned the corner, I saw Marta drop the blouse into the basket, her mouth a thin, hard line. Then she strode quickly toward her back door. Inside Marta's kitchen, the laundry sat untouched on the table. She reached straight for her phone, punching Ethan's name without hesitation. He answered on the second ring. "Marta? Is everything okay?" "No," she said flatly. "I just saw Lila take your mother. She didn't have her phone. She didn't look happy about going." "Where are they going?" There was a pause, then a light chuckle. "It's fine, Marta. She's going on a cruise." Lila surprised her. "She's been talking about it all week." "That's not what I saw," Marta snapped. She looked scared, Ethan. Like someone being taken somewhere she didn't choose. And Lila looked, she stopped, then said it, like she was moving her somewhere she wouldn't come back from. Ethan sighed, his tone dipping into the polite patience people use when they think they're talking you down. "Marta, I appreciate your concern, but you're reading into things." Lila wouldn't hurt her. "This is a good thing. She'll get to relax, meet people, take a break from the house. You're letting your imagination run away with you." "I know what I saw," Marta said, her voice low and sharp. "And I hope for your sake I'm wrong. But if I'm right, by the time you figure it out, it'll be too late." "I really have to get back to work," Ethan said. "Thanks for letting me know." The line went dead. Marta stared at the phone in her hand for a long moment. She knew a closed mind when she heard one. If Ethan wouldn't listen, she'd have to keep her own eyes open and act if it came to that. Meanwhile, in the car, the silence thickened. Lila's hands were tight on the wheel, her nails immaculate, her gaze fixed ahead. The houses gave way to longer stretches of road, lined with tall trees that leaned in over the asphalt. The light was brighter now, almost glaring, but it felt cold. I knew this area. The sea was west. We were heading east inland. "Lila," I began carefully, "this isn't the road to the port." Her lips curved slightly. "Trust me, we'll get there." But the more I looked out the window, the more certain I became, wherever she was taking me, it wasn't anywhere I wanted to go. The tires crunched over gravel as the car rolled to a stop, and the sight before me hollowed out my chest. This was no cruise terminal, no sea air, no distant shimmer of water. Instead, a wide driveway curved toward a low, modern building flanked by manicured shrubs and flower beds arranged in polite, soulless symmetry. Out front, a wooden sign in gentle pastel colors read, "Willow Pines Residence, a caring community for seniors." I knew instantly what it was, not because I'd been here before, but because the place gave off that same quiet, polished sterility I'd seen in brochures for elder facilities. I turned sharply toward Lila. "No, this isn't happening. I'm not staying here." She put the car in park, took a calm breath, and looked at me like I was a stubborn child. "Chloe, this is what's best. It's just for a while. You'll get rest, meet new people, and have professionals looking after you. You've been feeling strange lately, haven't you? This will help." My hands gripped the seatbelt. "I want to go home." Her lips curved, but there was no warmth in it. "Ethan worries about you, you know. This way, he'll have peace of mind. And you'll have company instead of rattling around alone in that house." I am not rattling, I began, but my voice cracked, giving me away. Before I could gather myself, the passenger door opened. A woman in a lavender uniform leaned down, her perfume a cloying floral that clung to the air. "You must be Chloe," she said in the overly bright voice people use on nervous animals. "We've been expecting you." Expecting me. The words landed like a weight. This wasn't last minute. This had been arranged. They each took an elbow, not rough, but firm, and guided me toward the glass-fronted entrance. Inside, the air was cooler, and the faint smell of disinfectant mingled with lemon cleaner. Somewhere, soft piano music trickled from overhead speakers, the kind meant to soothe rather than entertain. The reception desk was manned by another smiling woman, who slid a clipboard toward Lila without even glancing at me for more than a heartbeat. "We've got her file ready," she said, flipping pages for Lila to initial. I stood there like furniture while they discussed me in a tone that suggested I wasn't actually present. "Let's get you to your room," the uniformed woman said brightly, as though I'd agreed to any of this. The room they showed me was small but neat. A single bed with a quilt in muted blues, a narrow wardrobe, a side table with a lamp. The window was clean but looked out only onto a courtyard enclosed by high hedges. No open view. No street. I stepped inside, turned slowly, and before they could follow, I closed the door and twisted the lock. The click was soft but final. Almost immediately, a gentle knock came. "Chloe?" The woman's voice was practiced, coaxing. "We just want to explain how things work here." "I'm fine," I said, standing in the middle of the room, my pulse loud in my ears. Another knock, lighter this time. "It's only temporary. We promise. You'll feel at home here in no time." From further away, I heard Lila's voice, casual but clear. "Just give her time to settle in. She'll realize this is the best thing for everyone." Everyone but me, I thought. Across town, Ethan was wrapping up a meeting when his phone lit with Lila's name. A missed call. Then another. Then, oddly, one from the front desk at Willow Pines, which he ignored, assuming it was about some check-in detail. He decided to call me directly. The call went straight to voicemail. He frowned, tried again. Same result. Finally, he called Lila back. She answered on the first ring, her tone sunny. "Hey, love." All settled. "Your mom's in her suite, resting. It's a lovely place. She's going to be so happy here." "She's not answering her phone," Ethan said. "She didn't bring it," Lila replied smoothly. "She said she wanted a break from technology. The staff here all have phones if she needs to call you." Something in his voice shifted. "Marta told me, oh, for heaven's sake," Lila cut in with a light laugh. "Marta's being dramatic. She saw us leaving and decided to invent her own version of events. You know how she is always poking her nose in." Meanwhile, Marta was out in her yard again when Lila's car pulled into the driveway alone. No Chloe. Lila got out, her smile stretched tight. She walked toward the fence with slow, deliberate steps, her heels silent on the grass. "Hello, Marta," she said sweetly, resting her hands lightly on the top slat. "I hear you've been making comments to Ethan about me." Marta didn't flinch. I told him what I saw. Lila's smile stayed, but her eyes cooled, flattening like glass. "You need to be careful about spreading stories. It's not good for you. Or your relationship with certain neighbors." Marta tilted her head slightly. "Is that a threat?" "Just advice," Lila said, straightening. She took a step back toward her house. "Sometimes it's better not to involve yourself in other people's family matters. For everyone's sake." She turned and walked away, her figure crisp against the afternoon light. Marta stood there for a long moment, her hand tightening on the laundry basket's handle. She had been threatened before in her life, but something about this felt different, colder, more calculated. If Lila thought she could scare her into silence, she had chosen the wrong woman. Marta had lived through worse storms than this, and she had no intention of looking the other way now. Back in my room, I sat on the bed staring at the door, the locked latch a fragile barrier between me and whatever came next. I didn't know how long I'd be able to keep it closed. I didn't know if Ethan would ever hear the truth. But I knew one thing for certain. If I didn't find a way out, Willow Pines would be the last place I ever lived. I learned the rhythms of Willow Pines faster than they expected. They thought the schedule would soothe me. It only sharpened me. A routine is a map, and a map is something you can plot and escape on. On the second morning, I asked for my phone. They weren't cruel. That would have been simpler. They were trained to redirect, to reflect, to fold every truth into a soft, padded version that wouldn't bruise the day. That afternoon, Nurse Supervisor Avery came to my room. Early 40s, silver streak at her temple, eyes that missed nothing. "Chloe," she said, closing the door halfway. "I've been told you're expressing concerns about how you arrived." "I'm stating facts," I said. "May I ask a few questions? Have you felt confused at home lately? Any dizziness? Forgetting appointments? There's a note here," she tapped the tablet, "that you've been feeling strange." "I told my son I'd been feeling off," I said. "That's why I wanted him around more." Not a locked wing and a chorus of soothing voices telling me I'm wrong about my own life. Her expression didn't change, but she shifted from one foot to the other, a small crack in the smoothness. "Your daughter-in-law signed an interim consent while your son is on a work trip. We'll review with him when he's available. Call him now." "He's been updated," she said. "He knows you're safe." Safe is not the same as free. She pressed her lips together. "We'll keep working on an adjustment plan," she said, which meant no. They thought I'd calm down. Instead, I counted steps. From my room to the courtyard door, 76. From the door to the far hedge, 41, if you take the long way past the raised beds of rosemary and mint. From the hedge to the bench beside the koi pond, 22. Sit. Breathe. Look harmless. The fourth afternoon, Dan brought me a cardigan before the walk. "Wind's up a bit," he said, draping it over my shoulders with the careful touch of a decent man doing a difficult job. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. It isn't fair that good people work inside bad systems. They lined us up at the exit like ducklings. A chime sounded as the magnetic lock disengaged. Outside, the sun felt thin but honest. 2 laps, Maria had said, smiling at me as if we were conspirators. I smiled back because sometimes you have to let people believe their script is working. We set off, Eunice with her cane tapping a metronome, Mr. Patel in his caps and smart eyes, me with my new cardigan and old determination. Halfway around the second lap, I slowed near the koi pond. The path here narrowed, a seam between water and hedge. The staff liked the spot. It looked therapeutic in brochures. It also had the only camera I'd found outside, perched under the eave, its little red eye blinking. I needed witnesses. I looked down, then slightly up, as if watching a bird. Then I did the thing I'd been rehearsing in my room for 2 nights. I let my right ankle roll just enough, stepped down wrong with my left to take weight, and folded, not like a falling tree, but like a woman whose joints had finally betrayed her. Pain flared. Not blinding, but real, my own body offering a receipt for the lie I was selling. I let out a sound that wasn't only acting. "Chloe." Maria was there first, then Dan. 2 pairs of hands, too careful at first, then firmer when they felt me shaking. Mr. Patel stopped his lap and clicked his tongue softly. Someone called out for Avery. I twisted it, I said through my teeth. It grabbed. "Don't move," Dan said. "Let me look." Hands pressed, assessed. Maria's radio crackled. "Possible sprain, left ankle," she said. "Patient reports acute pain on inversion. Requesting transport for evaluation. Doctor's orders for imaging." Avery arrived at a run, hair slightly askew. She crouched, her eyes on mine rather than my ankle. "Looking for deceit? For delirium? For an opening?" "Chloe," she said, low, "we'll get you comfortable. Breathe." "I am," I said, and it was true. I had oxygen again. A narrow plan counts as air. The ambulance came with its briskness and its straps and its questions. "What's your pain on a scale of 1 to 10? Do you have an allergy to contrast? Are you on blood thinners?" Names recorded, vitals taken, a blood pressure cuff squeezing, the world distilled into numbers they could hold up like shields against liability. I made a small sound when they lifted my leg. The EMT KI, according to his badge, looked at me, then at Avery. "Better to do films," he said. "Roll out a fracture." Avery nodded, but her gaze stayed on me, sharp as a pin. I let my lids flutter the way frightened women do. It felt indecent to weaponize their expectations, but I had very little left to use besides my wits and their training. They rolled me into the back. Dan hovered by the ambulance doors. "I'll ride with," he offered. "No," Avery said, too quickly, then softened it. "Maria will cover your haul." "I'll accompany." Of course she would. The ride was a tunnel of fluorescent lights, inventory rattles, and the smell of plastic and antiseptic. Kai monitored the monitor. Alyssa, the paramedic, secured the straps and kept up the steady patter that calms. "Almost there. Hang tight. Tell me if the pain spikes." "Thank you," I said, and meant it again. These were not my enemies. Paperwork and people in nicer shoes were. The hospital swallowed us in automatic doors. ER triage, the little cubicles with curtains that never meet, the chorus of beeps and distant coughs. Avery answered most questions for me, fast and helpful and in the way. 74-year-old female. Officer Ramirez's pen moved across the page with neat, deliberate strokes, capturing every detail I could recall, times, dates, what Lila had said, even the exact words I'd used when she took my phone. He wasn't rushing me. He wasn't smoothing my story into something easier. That alone made me want to cry. When I'd finished, he flipped back through his notes, scanning them quickly. "Mrs. Delaney, your son's awareness is key. We need him to hear the truth from you directly, before anyone else can frame the story differently. Do you want me to call him right now?" "Yes," I said, and there was no hesitation in it. "Before she reaches him." Ramirez nodded, pulled out his phone, and dialed the number I'd rattled off from memory. My hands gripped the blanket on my lap, twisting the fabric as the rings drummed in my ears. 1, 2, 3. "This is Ethan." My son's voice came through, steady but rushed, the sound of a man answering between tasks. "Mr. Delaney? This is Officer Luis Ramirez with the city police." Ramirez began formally. "I'm here with your mother at St. Andrew's Hospital. She's asked me to inform you of a serious situation involving her placement at Willow Pines residence." There was a pause, and when Ethan spoke again, his tone was polite but skeptical. "Willow Pines? She's not supposed to be there." She's here," I broke in, leaning toward the phone as if I could pour my urgency through it. "Ethan, she lied to you." "Lila. She said she was taking me on a cruise, but she drove me straight to that place instead. She took my phone so I couldn't call you. I've been locked in there for days." Silence stretched, heavy and dangerous. I could almost hear him sifting through his memories, Marta's warning, my absence, Lila's explanations. "Mom," he said at last, and in that single word, I could hear the doubt slipping away. "I've been trying to tell someone," I said quickly, afraid that if I stopped talking, disbelief would seep back in. The staff wouldn't believe me. I had to pretend to hurt my ankle just to get here. "If you don't act now, she'll find a way to put me back." His breathing changed, no longer even, but shallow and quick. "Where exactly are you?" "St. Andrew's ER. They're keeping me here until we decide where I go next. But Ethan, you have to come in person. Don't let her get here first." "I'm leaving work right now," he said, his voice clipped and purposeful. "Don't let them discharge you to anyone but me. Tell the hospital that. Anne." "Mom," his voice caught rough and low. "I'm so sorry. Marta called me that morning. I didn't believe her." "You'll have time to apologize later," I said, though my throat was tight. "Just come." "I will. Stay put." Ramirez ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. "He's on his way," he said simply, but there was an undercurrent of resolve in his tone. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. For the first time since Lila had driven me away from my home, there was a straight line from me to my son, no filters, no sweet lies, no stolen phone standing between us. But the relief was tangled with something else, anticipation. Because when Ethan walked into this hospital, the truth wouldn't just be mine anymore. It would be his too. And once he saw it, there would be no going back. The curtain rings scraped against the metal rod, and there he was, my son. Ethan looked like he'd aged a year in the hours since our phone call. His tie hung loose around his neck, his shirt sleeves were rolled haphazardly, and his hair, normally immaculate, stuck up in uneven tufts. But it was his eyes that struck me most. They were sharp now, alive with a fury I hadn't seen in him since he was a teenager standing up to a school bully. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He simply stared, taking in the hospital bed, the ice pack around my ankle, and maybe the exhaustion written into the lines of my face. Then, without a word, he crossed the room and pulled me into a hug so fierce I had to catch my breath. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he said into my hair, his voice thick. "I should have listened to you. I should have listened to Marta." I let her. He stopped, his throat closing on the words. "You're here now," I told him softly. "That's what matters." He pulled back, his hand still gripping mine, and turned to Officer Ramirez. "Where is she?" Ramirez raised an eyebrow. "Your wife?" "Last I heard, she's at your residence." "Not for long," Ethan said flatly. While the doctor reviewed my discharge instructions, Ethan was on the phone. I could hear the clipped efficiency in his voice as he spoke to someone, a friend, a colleague. I wasn't sure at first, until I caught the name Sandra Blake. The name rang a bell. She was a family attorney with a reputation for being ruthless in court. By the time the nurse wheeled me into the hospital's small consultation room, Sandra herself was waiting, her tailored suit immaculate, a leather folio balanced on her lap. She had eyes like glass, not cold, but impossible to misread. "I've heard the outline," she said, opening the folio. "Let's get it on the record. Mrs. Delaney, I need you to walk me through the events from the day you left your home until this morning, in chronological order." I did, careful with the details. The phone Lila forgot to let me take, her sweet voice in the car, the pastel sign for Willow Pines, the staff who wouldn't believe me. Marta's attempt to intervene, Ethan's disbelief, the fall in the courtyard, the hospital call. Sandra's pen moved fast. When I finished, she looked at Ethan. "This is more than a domestic dispute. We're looking at unlawful confinement, misrepresentation, and deprivation of communication. If she had any financial control over your mother's assets, that could also cross into exploitation. I'll file for an immediate separation order today and petition for an emergency injunction preventing her from making any decisions on your mother's behalf." Ethan nodded once, his face grim. "Do it." When we arrived back at my house, Marta was waiting on the porch. She had a thermos of tea in one hand and a wool blanket draped over her arm. "Finally," she said, rushing forward. She hugged me first, fiercely, then Ethan. "I told you, didn't I? I told you she was trouble." "You were right," Ethan admitted, not even trying to soften it. "I should have believed you the first time." Marta gave him a look that was equal parts satisfaction and compassion. "You believe now. That's what counts." We didn't have long to settle before Lila's pristine white SUV pulled into the driveway. She got out with the practiced grace of someone who'd never had to rush for anything in her life, her hair smooth, her lipstick flawless. But her eyes, those betrayed her. "What on earth is going on?" she demanded as she came up the walk, her voice carrying over the quiet street. "Why is my husband not answering my calls? And why is your mother?" Ethan stepped forward, cutting her off. "We're done, Lila." She froze, her mouth still half open. "What?" "I filed for divorce," he said, his voice steady but edged with steel. "The police have your statements. My lawyer will be in touch." "You're not welcome here." The color drained from her face. "This is ridiculous." "She's confused." "She's been no," Ethan said, louder now. "The only one lying here is you. You told me she was going on a cruise. You took her to a nursing home. You took her phone so she couldn't call me. You signed paperwork I never saw. This ends today." Lila's eyes darted between us, looking for an opening, a chink in the wall we'd built. "Ethan, you're overreacting." "I was doing what's best for her, best for you," Marta said from the porch, her voice cutting clean through the air. "You wanted her out of the way." Lila turned on her. Marta has nothing to prove." Ethan interrupted. "She told me the truth when you didn't. Now get off this property before I call the police again." The next day, Sandra filed the papers. A separation order, divorce petition, injunctions. The process would take time, she warned us, but she was confident. "This is a strong case," she said. "Judges don't like deception, especially when it involves isolating a family member." Word traveled fast in our family. By that afternoon, my niece called, her voice shaking. "Aunt Chloe, I don't understand. She really did that to you?" "Yes," I said simply. "And now she's facing the consequences." That night, after Ethan made sure the locks were secure and Marta had gone home, I lay in my own bed, staring at the ceiling. The events of the past weeks swirled in my mind, the false smiles, the locked doors, the way my voice had been treated like a symptom instead of the truth. I wasn't magically free of the stress. I wasn't magically healed from the betrayal, but the weight on my chest was lighter. My phone was back on my nightstand, my home was quiet, and my son, my real, stubborn, big-hearted son, was finally standing on my side. Ethan came to the doorway before he left for the night. "She won't get near you again, Mom. I promise." For the first time in weeks, I believed him. And when I closed my eyes, I didn't have to worry about where I might wake up in the morning.